Hi guys, Raccoon here. Welcome to Storytime, where we look at some of the funniest, scariest, and outright craziest stories on the internet. For this week, we'll be taking a look at a horror story posted on r/horror stories. If this type of content isn't your cup of tea, I'll also be posting some different content both Tuesday and Thursday. So without further ado, let's get into the story. It started all so sweet and simple. It was last year in September. I mean, it was fucking annoying back then, but in comparison to how things are now, how my life is now, God, I wish I could turn back the clock. How I wish I could stop her from doing it. My name's Brandon, and something terrible happened to me. I had a normal life in a normal house in a normal town. Just ever fucking ordinary. Just mom, my little sister Annie, and I. Our dad had died 2 years ago, and finally things started to become normal again in our suburb street. Neighbors would talk on the streets, 40-year-old power walkers trying to get in shape. Sometimes there'd be a party where I'd get so shit-faced I didn't find my way home, but besides those things, nothing ever really happened. College was set to be over quite soon, and then I would stroll off to my new life. But as it was, this would still take some time. So I was waiting. Just normal life, I guess. Normal, but also boring. Especially for Annie. The trouble had started when she had hit puberty, hanging out with so-called bad boys when she was 14. Now, at that age of 18, she thought she could do as she pleased. She left everything she touched an utter train wreck. Getting drunk was the least of the things she did, and I already saw myself as a future uncle by how she acted with the boys. One fateful day, Mom had enough. If you want to become a failure, you can do that on your own. You're not getting any support from me anymore, she screamed and slammed the door to the living room. Mom never slammed doors. Mom just didn't do that. From then on, things got better. They agreed on something like a timeout. Annie would spend more time at home, and when she had earned Mom's trust back, they would see from there where to go on to. Essentially, Annie had put herself under curfew. She had given our mom such headaches that she was under strict oversight, or as strict as Mom brought it over herself to be with the girl. This meant no sleeping somewhere else, no parties, no anything. Maybe it was because she felt bad that Annie didn't have a dad around while growing up. Maybe she didn't have it in her to fight with her over some other stuff. But for some damnable reason, Mom let Annie keep her cell phone. I think it was a Saturday when that day came, when it happened. Annie had finally moved on from whatever crappy app to Snapchat and had found now TikTok. I remember the weeks before. She wasn't interested in the slightest, and now she was constantly on her phone, checking her profile or feed or whatever it's called. While I hated this stuff, the unfunny videos, the cringe, and just how annoying it was how everyone did it, and thought themselves so humorous and funny, Annie was absolutely in love with the trash, and due to her being prisoner in her home, barren of all fun, she was constantly making new videos and participated in the most ridiculous challenges. The last in the long line of those was the "I used to be so beautiful" one. You know it, right? Probably did it yourself, hopefully with less dire consequences. As I said, Annie was all over this stuff, doing challenges left and right, up and down, in the living room, the kitchen, the toilet, the Old Town Road challenge, having one of her friends bring over a cowboy hat and a plush pony, and they did it in front of the house. Our old neighbor, Mr. Francis, shaking his head in utter confusion as they kept giggling. The Beautiful People challenge, shoehorning Mom and me into her camera as she jumped up and down next to us. Her whole face just a giant smile. The Respect the Drip challenge, when she hopped down the stairs in her dad's old smoking with a top hat, and made the bad lip syncing in the hallway mirror, as I just walked off before she could somehow catch me again with her camera. Just hearing, "Respect the drip, Karen." The Chuck E. Cheese challenge, where she got a bunch of her stupid friends in the house while Mom was shopping, and they all danced in the living room. She begging me, "Please, please, please, Brandon, just 5 minutes. Please hold the camera. Please, please." Making the poutiest face of the century. The Lamborghini challenge in a tank top and her panties, and me storming into her room right as she was about to lift her shirt. "Are you completely nuts?" I shouted. "Brandon, shut up. Mom will hear you." She tried to shush. "Oh, Mom will know about this. Do you know how many perverts out there? You could ruin your whole life with this crap." I was still shouting. I was so angry. How could she be so stupid? In the end, she talked me down. She promised she would never do it again. Only safe challenges from now on, she swore. Pinky finger. I should have told Mom then right away. If I had, my sister might still be alive. Because however annoying and cringy and ridiculous it was, I would give fucking everything in my entire life to get her back. My last year at college was approaching, and I didn't know where I would end up. I decided to spend the weekend at home, catching up with old friends and so on. We had met at a bar downtown, but I didn't feel too good, and thus I was home about 11 p.m. The only reason I was there in the first place was for my friend Barry, who had gone on to Johns Hopkins University to become a doctor. It had been fun to see him again. Old Barry. I parked the car in the driveway and was about to get inside when I noticed Mr. Francis on his porch. "Hey Brandon, how you doing?" He greeted me cheerfully, smoking a cigarette. His wife had died the year before. Said he was eager to join her ASAP. "Hey Mr. Francis." I turned towards him. "Everything's fine, I guess. How are you?" He felt silent for a long time. "You know, Brandon, I'm not getting any younger. I think I finally hit that day." "What day?" I asked in confusion. Was this old geezer more wasted than I? "That day," he responded. "That day when you finally realize you will not, contrary to your silly beliefs, live forever." He chuckled. "Oh, yes, oh, Brandon. You have a life ahead of you. Don't waste it." "I won't. Good night, Mr. Francis." I shook my head in confusion. Was he depressive or just getting your typical old people weird? I fumbled with my keys and finally entered. Annie was right in front of me, the palm of her hand in my face. She wore her prom dress, all dark blue, her hair over her shoulders. "You have a date this late?" I joked. "Shh," she hissed, palm again nearly hitting my face. Then I saw it. Not again this terror of the earth. Not again. Tick-tock. Her cell phone was leaned against the flowers on the casket besides the huge mirror. Apparently, she was checking if everything was alright for her newest nuisance. I don't know this infernal app, and I never will. I assume she turned the right setting into place. Then she put her phone down again and stepped back. In one swift motion, she crossed her forearms in front of her chest and let them fall down, opening them in between as she whispered, "My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see." She giggled like a child and rushed up over the stairs. Mom was already in bed, it seemed. I got into the kitchen, grabbed myself a beer, and wandered off into my room, passing by Annie's. The room was wide open. She was already in her new red dress, draping a rose into her hair when she noticed me. "Going to sleep?" she asked. "No, maybe play a bit with the PS. What are you up to?" "New challenge," she smiled. Her whole face was a smile. You see, it was difficult. I hated this stuff. It was such useless time-wasting shit. But when she smiled like this, I didn't want to put her down, make her feel bad about something she enjoyed. If I had done so, she would still be alive. "What is it about?" I feigned interest. "You want to watch?" she asked joyfully. We went down again, me sipping lazy on my beer as she prepared everything. Then she explained. "You make yourself look ugly, plain clothes like jogging trousers and a sweater, and no makeup. Then you film yourself doing the pose. You motion in disgust at yourself and make a stupid face, or so on. Then you cross your forearms in front of your chest and drop them down, opening up. Then you dress up, put makeup on, look really nice and good. You pose sexy and confident, or what you think is sexy and confident. The app allows you to put the stuff together, as if it would seem that from one moment to the other you go from ugly to beautiful. All this is accompanied by some song going, 'I used to be so beautiful, now look at me.' Then this is the moment where the transition happens, and in your new sexy lion makeover, the song finishes, 'My actions are undutiful, it's clear to see.' It was kind of cute, I thought. At least not something overtly sexual. "Why do you do it so often?" I asked. She shrugged. "It's fun." "Alright, just keep straight, okay?" "Sure," she said, her face already down on her phone again, her eyes illuminated by the blue light. "I mean, you have been doing really well. Dad would be proud," I said. I was about to go when she answered, "Brandon?" "Yes?" "Thanks. It means something. You and Mom. I couldn't be without my family." "I know," I said. "I also couldn't be without myself," I teased, and got a rightfully deserved punch from my little sister. That annoying thing that I never asked for. But that was part of my world, one of the most important parts of it, one that I could not fathom to ever lose. "Look, why don't you go some more outside? I mean, without drinking all that crap," I said. "Just meet up with some friends, "I actually wanted to, but what?" I asked. "Chelsea is sick," she said. "Her mom actually answered her phone for her. She sounded really worried." "So what?" I continued. "Just meet up with someone else. You need to get a little bit outside." I winked and was about to turn around. "I'm sorry you think I'm a failure," she said. "I don't. I really don't think that, Annie." She smiled so brightly, her face just one big smile, happy and safe. My little sister and we went upstairs. I had finished my beer and went into the shower. As I approached my room, I passed hers by. Once again, passed it for the final time. There she was, now in hot pants and a crop top, hair tied into a ponytail. I shook my head. Girls. As I already said, the next day was Saturday. I hadn't put on an alarm, just woke up by myself. I got up, put on some shirt and went downstairs. Annie's room was still shut. Didn't think too much of it as it was still fairly early. At least for a Saturday morning. I went down, Mom was already up brewing coffee. I put in some toast and we just sat in the kitchen talking about Dad, how good Annie was doing, what jobs I should apply for. I think Mom needed that, needed to hear that things were finally back to normal. Normal for the last time, as a voice from above attested. I had drunk too much last night, or maybe she had just been down until dawn. But now we both heard it for the first time, this haunting sentence. Annie? My mom called upstairs. Finally, she was ready to get back to before life had become a constant mess of worrying and arguments. Annie? She called again. Annie answered, subdued. It was a mumbling upstairs. Why didn't she open her door and shout down, ready, or an annoyed "What?" or an agitated "Mom?" Why? Mom went upstairs and knocked. Annie? She called again. Annie did answer, subdued, gagged. Brandon, she called from above. I was sunken deep into my phone reading news about Red Dead Redemption 2. I was so eager for this game to come out, to rob the bank in Blackwater. It would be so much fun, I imagined. I barely recognized the second call from my mother. She's not answering, she proclaimed in disappointment. I went out of the kitchen, down the hallway to the foot of the stairs. What's going on? I asked. She doesn't open the damn door, my mom shouted, frustrated. Hadn't things been back to normal, as I had thought? Did you knock? You know, some people are really fans of that, I joked. I did, she shouted down. Why didn't Annie open? Annie, I heard my mother again. I went upstairs, knocked myself. She's awake, I said, my ear pressed against the door. Are you alright? My mother tried. Nothing. After 20 minutes of this, we felt unease creeping up on us. Annie was clearly awake. Her voice, though, was different, muted and subdued. Why didn't she come out? After 10 minutes more, we got the tools from down in the garage. Dad hadn't been able to turn me into a real tool rigger, but I knew how to open a door with a screwdriver. The image we saw was just bizarre. Annie was on her bed, some piece of cloth stuffed into her mouth. Her right arm was tied to the headframe of the bed. The left one was motioning in spasms across her chest. Her lips mumbled through the makeshift gag. Jesus, uttered my mother. What's going on, Annie? She approached her daughter, who looked at her with panicked eyes. My mother was quick to release her from the cloth stuffed in her mouth. 3 socks, as it turned out. And Annie was suddenly able to answer our calls. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see, she sang. What, Annie? Who did this? Are you alright? Was someone here? My mother asked in fear. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at Annie, I shouted. What's going on? I went for her arm to release her from the bonds. I used to be so beautiful. That's enough, my mother insisted, her voice failing the intended authority. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. Annie continued. Annie, fucking stop it, I screeched. I had untied her arm, which suddenly continued to motion she had so dutifully practiced last night. Brandon, what is this? Asked Mom. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see. I used to... Annie continued. Annie, stop! Stop it! What's wrong with you? My mother grabbed Annie's shoulders, but kept getting hit by the hands that still crushed each other. That made those motions. First pouty face, then present, the gorgeous dress, which she was still wearing after all. It's not funny. I tried to support my mom. I used to be so beautiful. Now look. Annie kept going. Then, a sudden noise. My mother had lost control. She had hit Annie straight on her cheek. That's enough. I don't know what you think you're doing, but it's not funny or artsy or whatever is going on in your head. My mother spat as she stormed out the room, shamed in the mocking words of her daughter. Annie, the fuck? Mom is really upset, I said. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at... She went on and on. I left her room without looking back. I went downstairs. Mom was out on the porch, cigarette in hand. She hadn't smoked since I was 8. Mom? I asked. Oh, she called out, whisking away a tear from her face. Why, Brandon, why? Why does she do that to me? I know it's difficult growing up without a father, especially for a girl, but why? Why does she hate me so? She started sobbing. I caught her in a bear hug only a son can give. Sure, I was disappointed, but Annie was just a normal 18-year-old girl. I imagined her 10 years later, maybe a sales manager or a lawyer, sitting on a table, maybe even with a child of her own. Mom, please, I said as I ushered her inside. We got down in the living room. I got her some tissues and said I'll be right back. I wasn't. I went upstairs to give Annie the speech of her life. Already mid-stairs, I caught in my ears. She hadn't stopped. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see, I heard, coming from her room. I approached the open door, and there she was, standing right in front of me. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. Pose. Ugly and unhappy face. Pouty mouth. Crisscrossing forearms. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see. Swoop pose. Good looking and beautiful face, and a smile that filled her face. Of course, she didn't change. She just kept continuing the same movement again and again and again and again. I noticed there were sores already on the sides of her arms where they would rub against each other. Annie, what the fucking hell is wrong with you? I shouted towards her. She just kept doing it. Doing it all over again and again. Always a big smile on her face. Her eyes though, they seemed sad. Tears poured down from them cheeks of hers. She was crying yet kept smiling. Annie. I calmed down. Something was not right about this. This was no joke at all. It dawned on me. I went downstairs, down into the living room. Mom had also calmed down and looked at me, questioning as I entered. We should call an ambulance, Mom, I demanded. Nonsense, my mother replied. She's just acting out as always, she scoffed. I don't blame her. She was hurt. She didn't understand. None of us did. I'm calling Barry, I announced, and got back into the house. Luckily, he was still in town. He looked at her, made some probing motions, didn't find anything. Advised to call the real doctors. The real doctor didn't find anything either. The guys that came with the ambulance were as flustered as us. Checked her pulse, her heart rate, nothing out of the ordinary. Just your typical 18-year-old antics, right? They took her to the hospital though, when they saw how she was crying. Mom and I right after them. Doctors there were equally astounded on this behavior. It had been going for hours now, always the same posing ugly arms beautiful. By her proclaiming, I used to be so beautiful, now look at me. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see. They had to sedate her, heavy. Mom and I stayed all night at the hospital. As soon as her eyes opened, she continued with, I used to be so beautiful, now look at me. My actions are undutiful, it's clear to see. The head nurse was a sour old lady that probably thought Annie was faking it all. Those kids today. She shook her head in disgust. I think if I hadn't held my mother back, she would have punched that woman to death. Doctors came again, still flustered, wondering. They wanted a PET scan and a CT, whatever that meant. The problem though was her arms. By now they were really red and open from all the crisscrossing, so they wanted to tie her down, strap her to a bed like some lunatic. It was ugly. She resisted, and kept doing the poses as good as she could. Finally, tied to some stretcher, my little sister was scanned and prodded like an animal, yet none of the doctors was any wiser. Hysterical, psychotic, neurotic, and on they went. In the end, we were given an option: the psychiatric ward or at home. Mom, slowly grasping the situation, would have none of it. Her daughter wouldn't end up locked up and drugged in a nut house. My mother threw herself into it, constantly sitting on the PC, researching what strange illnesses had begone her only daughter. Meanwhile, I had finally taken to assess Annie's new situation. We mostly left her in her room. After some 14 or 17 hours, she was burned out, rolled her eyes up in that head of hers, and just fell over. She would rest for some 10 hours and start again, and again, and again until her eyes would roll up in them sockets. I used to be so beautiful, now look at me. My actions are undutiful, it's clear to see. On and on. I don't know when we got fed up with it. I just didn't disapprove when Mom tied her down in the middle of the day, put some brittle in her mouth. She sat at her side for hours though and read to her. Annie didn't have any of it. Kept fighting her bonds, kept struggling to make the now all too familiar gesture and poses. Someday it dawned on me to check her phone. There was one message from Chelsea, probably written by her mother, that Chelsea was not feeling well. Other messages read, "Where are you?" or "Yo, what's going on, babe?" I didn't reply to any. After 1 week without change, we had a therapist over. We sat him down in the living room and pushed Annie towards him, her constantly motioning and repeating, "I used to be so beautiful, now look at me. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see." He said she was acting in response to a hostile environment. Mom threw him out. Who did he think he was? From then on, Mom lost it more and more. Got witch doctors and exorcists into our house. Of course, none of them did any good. The priest that tried to get rid of the demons inside lost it all when he saw her piss herself. Yes, that was how bad it had gotten. When left alone, she would just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. We had to tie her down for everything, or she wouldn't stop crisscrossing her forearms. After 1 month, we had Barry help us, feeding her via a tube. Mom withdrew into the internet, searching for an answer that wasn't there. I wasn't so resigned. I tried. Boy, I tried. I took Annie out in the garden. Still nothing changed. I used to be so beautiful. You still are, little sister, I replied. My actions are undutiful. It's clear to see. Oh, come on. It's not too bad. I tried to joke with her, holding back tears. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. I know. You remember Dad inside there? I pointed towards her head. My actions are undutiful, it's clear to see. She did. Tears came down her reddened face. I just hugged her, ignored the protest of her arms. She was still in there. Mom knew that too. She told the family it was something with the brain. Grandma was so sad but didn't say a thing when she came visiting. Grandpa was already a hole of dementia, but he talked long to her. No tears came from her eyes. Maybe she was just happy somebody didn't stare down at her? Judged her? What must have gone on in her head? I am to blame, or I wasted too much time on TikTok? Or maybe I was such an idiot I should have never done that challenge. Whatever it was, I couldn't tell. I got a grasp on her eyes when she seemed at ease, or sad, or angry. There was nothing much beyond that. Finally, when she seemed too agitated, we just drugged her into sleep. You can judge me all you want, I don't mind. I did what I thought was right. One fateful day in winter, I tried to tuck her into a wheelchair. Might do her some good after all, to see the children in the snow, right? What an asshole I was. They hit us. Her, a snowball right into her face. I don't know what she thought. Her eyes swelled up, tears rolling down her face. Jealousy? Humiliation? Wrath? Christmas came and went, and so did New Year's Eve. We didn't celebrate no more. Mom just emerged from her room for the occasional cigarette. I sat Annie in the living room and put on White Christmas, but tears just streamed down her cheeks. She was a husk now. A rake so thin and bony, all her energy went into the constant saying and motion. I used to be so beautiful. I love you, Annie. Now look at me. I do. Every day. I'm so sorry. My actions are undutiful. I am so sorry. It's clear to see. Sometimes me and Mom, we talked like everything was okay. Sometimes we just sat there in silence. Our tears, our only companions. I took Annie outside whenever I was home. Mom had given up on her. Mom had given up her job, was hunting for some clues on how to save her daughter from this miserable existence. Shut herself down for days. Life became unbearable for all of us. Outside in the garden, at least Annie could enjoy the sun or the fresh air, or so I told myself. Sure, it was tough, even horrible, but she had people that took care of her. Yet, every time I talked to her and hugged her and washed her and took her to the toilet, she would cry. I read to her. I researched thoroughly what she might like or what could calm her pain. I showed her new movies, new trends of clothing, and even bought a new dress, which I put on her. I think it was not shame which she felt, because we had crossed that line months ago. Her eyes were all that showed emotions, for her mouth just produced a hideous smile. Her eyes were sad and red and teary. I didn't take her outside afterwards. I had taken a job at a local gas station. I couldn't leave them alone. Some friends asked me if I really wanted to throw my life away for her. I told all of them to fuck themselves. My mom needed me, my sister needed me, even more. It was so hard to sit, just see her stir and twist, to look into her pleading eyes. I'm not entirely sure how aware she was of everything, but I am certain she was not in control and probably experienced all of it. I was on my way back home when I got the idea. Annie's phone had died down, so I didn't check her messages. But her getting sick and Chelsea getting sick couldn't be a coincidence. It had been months, but the thought came only now. Now that I was across her house, I knew where the girl lived, so I just stopped by and knocked. Nobody opened. I was about to turn around when I realized the door wasn't entirely closed. I know, I shouldn't have done it, but I stepped inside. The house was an utter mess. Clothes and food everywhere, completely dark. I went around but didn't find nobody, so I slowly made my way upstairs. The smell was awful, like meat left in the sun to rot for days. The door wasn't even shut. I saw her from the hallway. An IV connected to her tied down arms, and her mouth soon shut. The lips was trying to struggle against the blocking thread. The worst was her eyes, asking, pleading, begging. "What are you doing here?" a voice asked from behind. Chelsea's mother looked like a ghost, white skin, dark and sunken eyes. I made as fast as I could and got out. I don't know what became of Chelsea. I called Barry from the car. No point in discussing with Mom. I hadn't seen her in days. Was she still there? Had she abandoned us? No, she must be there, somewhere. And she was. I talked to her, pale and hollowed like a shadow of a woman she once was. She agreed Barry came. We were at her side when he put the needle into her. Finally, she was gone. Finally at peace. Barry took care of it all. Cleaned her veins or whatever. Ambulance didn't ask any questions. I didn't care. She was gone. Snatched. Gone. None of us was in the mood to get over it. We went to the cemetery every day. Mom wasn't able to let go. She searched and searched for some answers that simply was not there. It didn't exist. Then yesterday came that dreadful day. I had been getting groceries. Some bubblegum bitches posing sexy in front of the shelves. I ignored them. I didn't want to think of my sister like this. I couldn't go on like this. I came home all silent, business as usual. After hours of just sitting and staring and grieving, I called for my mother. She didn't respond. "Mom?" I opened the door. "Rand," she answered, sounded like she was barely awake. "Mom, you need to eat something," I insisted. "It's just your sister. I don't recognize myself anymore. It's all right. No, I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. No. My actions are undutiful. No, please not her. It's clear to see. I used to be so beautiful. Now look at me. Mom, my actions are undutiful. It's clear to see. Mom!" I couldn't go through this again. We had lost Annie just weeks ago. How much can a person take before it's too much? I hit her with a plate. She fell and her head just made a crunching noise. Then she was gone. I killed my own mother with a plate. It sounds like a bad punchline, but it's true. Her corpse is still up there. I don't care anymore. I don't care. Outside on the street, I see them laughing. Fuck this shit dirt app. Fuck you if you think you would have done any better. You think I would have killed my family, my whole world, if there was any other way? Fuck you. Now finally they react, although it is far too late for me. At least they save some others now that they prohibit the use of this thing, this evil. "I'm sorry you think I'm a failure," I remembered her saying. I don't. I really don't think that, Annie. That was it for today. I hope you enjoyed this narration. I've never done anything like this, and I hope to get better with every passing minute. If you enjoyed this narration, please leave a like and consider subscribing, as it'll mean the world to me. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you all Tuesday. Have a blessed day.